Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's August 27th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and it was mostly all downhill today. We had a two-tier channel that started down right after the open. It's a fairly strong downtrend, very clear two-tiered channel. It started out looking like maybe a spiking channel, but once we started dropping here, you want to get your equal distance, and you can see we had a perfect equal distance. We actually, the stem goes a little lower, but the closings are right inside there, and that's pretty common. And we finally had a break here just after lunchtime, had a two-legged correction, and then started back down in an attempt to probably make a new low here when we ran out of time. So we started out with a pretty strong move up here, but it didn't. As soon as the opening came, it wasn't long that we had the close outside, a new high, and we were off to the races to the downside. So um, not quite as volatile as what we have had, but the volatility picked up a little bit today, along with maybe a little bit more volume as well. Um, this was a nice downtrend. And notice where all your big moves came from is off the key entry point. We really didn't get this trend line confirmed until here, and that's when your first big move comes down. You could almost argue for that to be off of it too. And we come back to it, there's the next one. We come back to it again, there's the next one. Again, all your big moves come off those key entry points, and you got to learn to find those. And this original one up here, the very high of the day, on a failed break higher. And you got to be careful with these trades. I don't mark them a lot. I mark this one if you want to be a little aggressive. I tend to like those trades just simply, and when they fell out the bottom. Unfortunately, you got a nice little bullish bar here, but it's not the signal bar. The bearish one beside it is, and the inside bars are not as, um, they're not as reliable. They tend to fail a lot. That's why this one's only green right here. We'll talk about it in a minute. But anyway, just remember those failed breaks out of ranges tend to be big moving areas. And then the key entry points, which are the trend lines, the EMA, and when you get the EMA and the trend line working together, it's even better. So, like right here, notice that big move down. But let's back out a little bit, talk about the trades. I actually already got started on this and was about 5 minutes into it, and I looked and it wasn't recording again. So it was on pause, and I did not hit the pause button, so I have no idea what happened. I'm glad I caught it before I spent much time on it, so I'm just basically starting this over. So 7 o'clock came right in here. I marked this. I'm not crazy about this trade. I marked it. If you want to be really aggressive, you might take this trade. And the only way I'd probably want to take this trade, notice it's a second entry, but it's a very neutral signal bar, but it is off a key entry point. It does confirm that key entry point, but it's not back to the EMA. This is really steep. You've really got one leg up, and this is part of a second leg. But the way you might enter this is once this second bar forms and it's semi-bullish, it's still not real bullish, but if prices break above it, you got 3 bars in a row that are making higher highs and higher lows. So when this bar right here broke above this one, you might drop a limit order back one tick above the original signal bar and see if it'll back up and fill you. And if it does, you may take that trade. I generally like to do that when this bar is real bullish, and even though that's slightly bullish, there's still a lot of stem there, so I'm just not crazy about that trade, but it's there. So we run up here and we get a little bit of an overshoot. This couldn't, I mean, at this point it looks like an overshoot. It could be like this one, and it may turn out there's another tier to this channel here. So you don't know for sure that's an overshoot. That's what it looks like at this point. But we come back, you get a first entry, and then it breaks lower right there on this big bearish bar and instantly turns up and goes out the other side. Generally, when that happens, you're going to trap some people to the wrong side, and that's exactly why this shoots up real strongly there. It doesn't go much higher before you get a break of the trend line, but all the same, there's a little bit of a trap there. There's a little bit of congestion there too. I'm not as crazy. Normally, I might make this one blue, But this is so close to the highs here. You still got enough room to get out, but it's pushing it, and you definitely don't have enough room to go long over this bar. And so if this would have closed maybe one tick above this on its very high and you had a little more room, I'd probably make that blue. But the way it looks there, I still think that's a little bit aggressive. But notice what happens here. You finally get a break. You come back first entry. You come back second entry. This actually went lower and turned and went out the other side. Doesn't matter. You could have waited on it to close and went one tick above it. It's still a second entry long. But I like going long one tick above that bar when it turned back up and went out. It comes back and gives you a higher low here, but not a very good signal bar. I'd probably skip it. I'd wait because I really thought that would take on off. And you see even now it takes on off, but it's weak. It's a little bit weaker. It's kind of a repeat pattern of this, except it's outside the trend channel. So it's a little, you know, it doesn't hold as much weight as it does if it had been on that key entry point. But we were overdue to come back to the EMA, and it is on the EMA, so that's something to think about too. So, but notice what happens. You still don't have a new high in place, and you come back and you get another little repeat pattern there, almost like this second entry right here. You don't get that little jog back again like you did here with a higher low, but you get a double test. Notice you made that low, you test it once, you test it twice, you get a second entry long, you get a real bullish bar. That's a great place to enter. And we finally push on up, make that new high, and then you get that first entry short right there. But you're so far away from the EMA, it's a failed break higher. You've had a close outside the trend line. Now you got two legs up. This could turn out to be an important high of the day, so you may want to risk that one. Generally, you want to wait on the lower high, and you don't really get that chance here because we're already too low before that opportunity comes right here. So if you don't take this one, you got to wait all the way to here to get a really good entry. So there's some clues here that we may go lower. Notice how you're making a lower high each time here. That's a good clue. There's another possibility of a breakout pullback short right here, but it's right into that low. I just don't think you want to risk it. But the mere fact that you're making these lower highs each time is a good clue. And that's a relatively bearish bar. The only problem is right into those lows there. And the odds are you're probably going to get a measured move like this. And you can see that gives you a target of way down here. Notice how we couldn't get below that right there, so we didn't quite get that target on that move, and then we started another move over here. But that might have given you a little more incentive to want to take that one. I think you're better off to skip it. It's just too much support right there. And notice it didn't go far before it comes back. And then what I did was I drew this line off here first thinking this was a spike in channel. And you can see it bouncing down that line, and I just drug it up here and we turned down right at it. And so that's a great place to enter. It's just a first entry, but it's right off that expected key entry point, and you would expect to get a measured leg down. And so and that's a nice bearish bar. It is an inside bar again, but because of the key entry point and the fact of how it's closing right there, fitting perfect, I like that one. That's the reason I gave it green, though, just because it's an inside bar and they're never as reliable. If that was the true signal bar, I'd probably make this one blue. Or if it was a second entry, I might, but it's still a little bit aggressive because you don't have this line confirmed, so you're just trying to use your skills, your guessing skills based on what you're seeing down here to drag this up and hope that's it. But when it comes back right here and gives you a second entry short and another big bearish bar, now you got some real proof, and that's the better place to enter. Notice your new low, first entry, second entry. And this is a little bit of a congestion area with a little failed break higher and turning down right off the EMA and the trend line. This actually broke higher and then turned and went down, so you could have gone short one tick below this bar, or you could have waited here. There's not quite as much room if you go short here, so you may let it break lower and drop a limit order. And you see you could have gotten filled all the way back up here at the EMA almost. So that's probably the better way to enter that one. But when it comes back again here, if you're not in and it makes that double top another bearish bar. Go short there by all means. And then that's a double top, so that's a new high. And then you get a first entry, and then a second entry, it fails, and you still have a little bit of room down here. You really could have even argued to enter there, since that's off that shorter term key entry point. I didn't mark that one because this is really like I was really counting this as your new high, so I think this was the better one, especially when it broke higher first and then turns and makes that little closes right on its low. That's a really good sign, and you figure we're probably, this is our price's first goal. Is this is your this would fill the gap if you prices trade down here on the daily. In other words, we opened right there, or we closed right there yesterday, and we opened here today. So there's a gap between that yellow line and this brown line, and your figure prices are going to fill that right there. Sure enough, they bounce right off of it, and you get a lower high here, so I'm less likely to enter there. We're not quite back to the trend line. That's close enough that it's probably turning down off the EMA, but there's not a lot of room there. I'd wait. And unfortunately, you just don't get a good entry to catch this last little bit, because right here, you're right into the trend channel line, and you don't know that this is going to be a two-tiered channel at this point, and it's just too risky going short right there. And of course, it does bounce off the low. And look at this right here. You get a first entry and then a second entry, and it fails and turns back up. My only concern with this is if this was right here at the EMA and maybe closed right above it, and you still had plenty of room back to the trend line, I might say enter there. But this has been a strong downtrend, and you're just setting yourself up for trouble if you start trying to pick bottoms. And even though there's a failure right there, it's right into that EMA. There's not a lot of room, or midline, and there's not a lot of room back to the EMA. So it's getting risky. Just be patient, and you'll see what happens here by being patient. You find that you run up here and you make a new high, and you make a double top, and you get a big bearish bar. You actually, if it would have broke lower here, I probably would have said just go short right there. There is a little overlap, but when it tries to go higher again and closes back inside that trend line key entry point, I like entering there, and you can see it wasn't long before it takes off again. There is a lower high here, and it's close enough that you can call that off the EMA, but the main thing is it's off that key entry point right there. If you drew that off those first few closes there in the high, and you can see that closes right inside there in a big bearish bar. The only problem with this one is it's a little bit close to this support, so that makes it a little bit scary. I think there's enough room to get out there, and this is a strong downtrend, so you may take that trade. And then of course we come down here and we ease back over to the key entry point again, and you got a little congestion area here. You break out and it turns down right off the key entry point and gives you that big bearish bar. There is another entry right here. There's actually a second entry short right here, but we're not back to the key entry point, and you probably have enough room to get out there, but I don't know if I necessarily would treat that as a failed break higher. The only thing I would say is you could get short off the top of the resistance area right there, and maybe have enough room to get out before here. Actually, your closes are right there, so you're really pushing it there without being back to the key entry point. And notice if you're just patient, it comes back to that key entry point and gives you a big bearish bar. And notice how it takes off then. And that's just a risk you have to decide right there, because that is a second entry short. But when you start going sideways like this, and especially that tight, second entries don't mean anything because they'll flip-flop back and forth both ways. But look, notice how we pushed up here and touched that key entry point and closed way down here on the very low. That's the place to go short. And you can see that your smarter traders all like that. Look how it just drops. Then you get a lower high here. This is off the key entry point, or off the shorter term key entry point and the EMA. But but I'm not crazy about this one. Just there's plenty of room to get out, and you haven't hit the lower side of the trend channel yet, so you still got some room to go. But when this made this inside bar and two matching lows, that kind of worries me a little bit, because you would think we would have broke below that and just kept going. But this is a fairly strong downtrend, and that is off a secondary key entry point. It is off the EMA. It is a bearish bar. You may take that trade, and you can see it was a quick, easy trade, but it's a little aggressive, so I made it green. Then we drop on down here, and we still haven't got to the low yet, but we get a second entry short right here, and this is almost very similar to this trade, except your signal bar is kind of flip-flopped. This time your better signal bar is the inside bar, but it's somewhat of a, and it is a second entry, but it's still very similar to that. So, but again, you're not back to this key entry point, so I think you're better off to wait. And you can see that one would have worked, but I just think you're taking a risk going short there, and I didn't mark it. And notice how suddenly we reverse. So this is a pretty nice reversal here. Notice if you draw your trend line off those first couple, and then you get a first entry and then a second entry short that fails, and this actually broke lower below this big bearish bar and then turned and went out the other side. I like having a buy stop right there, and you can tell this was a trap, and that a lot of these shorts got fooled. You know, they may not have necessarily got fooled right here, but they realize, hey, something's changed. This thing has gotten above the EMA, and it's going higher. I got to get out of here, and look what happens. They all start exiting, and man, this thing just shoots right up. That's a sure sign that there was a short trap there, right there. When that broke lower and then suddenly turned and went the other way, they got people know they got to exit. And that's why you get this big rocket up, and people, scratch their head and say, this thing's been going down, 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 and then suddenly, boom, it's going rocketing the other way. What happened? Well, something's changed now. We're outside the trend line. We couldn't get back down to the trend channel line. We got a reversal pattern setting up here above the EMA and on another short-term trend line, or at least so far short-term. Something's changed. Get the heck out. And that's what happened right here. Boom, off it goes. And we just kind of started going sideways. This, again, you're just better off to sit here and wait. And then finally you get a double test here. Notice it made that high. You test it once, you come back, you test it twice. Big bearish bar. You also got a close outside and a move up here. I don't think you quite got a new high, but that's the first break of this main channel, and you'd expect prices to try to go lower again. I think that's a good place to go short. You're still a little bit away from the EMA, so you probably got enough room to get out almost there before you get back to it. Doesn't end up mattering. You just shoot on down. You get a lower high right here, but again, not a very good setup. And then look what happens. You make a low, and then you make a first entry, and then you make a second entry, and it fails instantly and turns up. And if it breaks above here, we're probably going to come back up and at least test this breakout area, but this thing just keeps going. That takes you in the 2 o'clock hour. You might have even considered entering right here if it wasn't so far away from the EMA and you had a little better signal bar, because it's a little breakout pullback long from here. The line doesn't go over there, but that's what it is. But being that close to 2 o'clock, and being that far away from the EMA, I'm probably going to skip that. You would expect another leg up like this. That's what I would be shooting for. We don't quite get that, but we came real close. But anyway, this was fairly straightforward, fairly easy to find. Even if you didn't have it by, off these first two, you should have had it when it came back, right here. You should have drawn that. And when it came back here, you should have been ready. And if you didn't go short here, you definitely want to go short here. And you can see that most of your smarter traders waited till here, and then they felt better about it, and look at it go. you can tell where the smart traders come in. And it's always going to be these key entry points. Just like right here, where did this big move come from? A trap on a key entry point, the EMA and this short-term trend line. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, not a bad trading day. Weren't sure. I was surprised that we got a downtrend all day long, because really lately we'd come back and fill these gaps and then we get another leg up. And so you had a couple of different ways to look at this early. It might have been we're trading inside the overnight highs and lows until we went lower here. And so it could be a range day. We could bounce here and be a range, or we could bounce here and get another leg up. But once we kept going lower, I mean, once you got this confirmed trend line, just stay with it until prices tell you otherwise. And that's not till you get a break here. And normally I'd tell you don't go long here, but that's just too good a setup right there. And it's just a nice trap. And you might have got food there yourself. But let me back out and just show you something here. The fact that we couldn't get to this downside and then suddenly we're outside the key entry point, the main trend line, and the fact that you got 3 or 4 bars stacking up there, that's not a good sign to go short right into that EMA and right into that trend line. So just sit tight. But when you see it go lower and fail and turn out, if it breaks through those 3 bar matching high right there where it couldn't get through before this time, it's probably going to trigger stops and it's going to take off. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So the main thing is most people don't see these traps and can't find them because they're too busy entering in the wrong direction. They're the ones getting fooled. And people will ask me, I went short here on a second entry short. What happened? Well, you just got trapped. And when it rockets up like that, if you're good short and it suddenly turns instantly and rockets up like that, that's a sure sign you got trapped. And that's what happened right here. This was a long trap. Traders trying to pick bottoms, when it broke up right there, they got long, and suddenly they realize it turns back down and closes on its low. If it breaks below there, it quickly rockets down, because all these buyers right in here and trying to get long, trying to pick a bottom, realize, oops, I'm wrong and I got to get out of here. And that's what happens at most of these key entry points. People just get fooled. Right here, people were probably still looking at this as a range and looking at a failure here, and they got that big bullish bar, and they say, well, if it breaks higher here, I'm going long. And it breaks higher and then instantly turns, it closes on its almost low, and then boom, it's going the other way. That's a trap. You got trapped right there. So sometimes traps just happen, and even the best traders get fooled. So if you get fooled, it's not the end of the world. Just study those points and learn from them. And just learn, the key to this whole thing is patience and being able to see the overall context and what's going on. If you can do those two things, you can get better at this. But you got to study your tendencies and figure them out and improve from them. That's the real work is not trading every day. The real work comes at the end of the day when you come in and you study all your setups and your trades. First thing I do is study all my trades. And I come back and I just study the chart. And that's why, that's really one of the main reasons I started doing this chart lesson long ago. It was a habit. I was already doing it. So I said, well, I'm going to share it with everybody else too, so to show them what I'm doing. And that's how this all originated, because this is what makes you better. Coming back at the end of the day, I'd like to be home, but I'm sitting here right now doing this chart lesson. But it not only helps other people, it helps me, because I'm learning my tendencies. I'm studying chart price action and chart movements, and I'm learning what the ES does, and I'm learning my tendencies, and that's what really helps. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.